So glad you can join us for this little webinar we like to call Virtual Brunch with Actual Nerds. My name is Leighton Rasco. I'm from Attendee Management. I'm a nerd, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. So the topic today is hybrid meetings. And I had a joke queued up because 90% of the time there's a dog sleeping over here. And I was going to show the dog, say he's our in person for this hybrid event, joke how he's sleeping and how my audience engagement is lacking. However, someone in the office popped a bag of popcorn. So that audience is fully engaged at the bag of popcorn. So instead, I'm just going to start clicking through some slides. Please change your Zoom name to reflect your full name as well as your organization. Please stay on mute unless you're talking. Please talk because this is an open discussion. So we need your talking to ask questions to Cindy. If you haven't already, go to our archives at attendeenet.com/archives and view all of our past brunches. We also have a new tab on there called interviews. attendeenet.com/interviews. We did this state of the industry interview series last month. Cindy was one of our guests. We had Mike Dominguez, we had Corbin Ball, we had Jim Spellos, we had a whole bunch of great guests. We did a highlight reel, and then we also posted the full interviews for each one on our website. So check that out. And without further ado, here's Cindy.
Hello,
Cindy.
I'm live.
All right, so Cindy is with us today. We are gonna start as we usually do, just by posing one of the questions that you guys submitted on the registration. Missy Floyd Seward says, "Hey nerds," which feels a bit of an attack. Hybrid events have come with increased budget needs. Can you share any tips, hacks on how to provide hybrid services economically?
Yeah. Oh, she's
Yeah,
literally
that's
asking
the million-dollar question.
Exactly. She is literally asking the million-dollar question. So here's the thing. Even prior to COVID and the pandemic, one of the things that I had pitched to a lot of companies, whether it was associations, nonprofits, or corporations, is that you need to have some sort of digital presence. And the reality is during the pandemic, it quickly woke us all up and showed us who was ready to be in the digital world and who was not. Now, I'm going to pull off the Band-Aid and share the real truth. Unless you have like a budget that is equivalent to a Super Bowl or to a really big corporate event, without naming some client names, you're gonna struggle a little bit here first, because hybrid is the new buzzword, but I am challenging people to understand that I think it's going to be more like a hybrid sandwich. And let me explain what that means. Is that you're going to do some stuff digitally, promote it, whether it be through social media, email blasts, traditional email blasts, etc. Drop the paper mailing. And then you're going to have your in-person event. But then you're going to take that content. So in other words, your in-person event is going to be videotaped, and you're going to screen grab all of that and repurpose it for later a virtual event. So in other words, it will not be live. It will not have that hybrid component because people's budgets will end up winning. It will decide whether or not you can truly do a true, well-produced hybrid. And the reason why I compared it to a sports analogy is because if you think back during the last 14 months, the only real industry last year that can't continue to meet in person, okay, while we were in lockdown mode was the sports industry. And you want to know why? Because they have come to terms, not only the corporate brands and the sponsorships, but even the TV stations and the owners, they came to terms with the fact that this is what it's going to take to keep it going, even if I have to lose a little bit of money at first, because it is that much revenue. But in reality, when we are talking about association meetings and nonprofit fundraisers, you have a real budget that you have to attain to, and you have to stick to it. So I think people are going to be using and throwing around this buzzword a lot, but I think at the end of the day, budgets are going to supersede anything else. And that is what we have found, because starting last November, we started getting quotes, or getting requests, I should say, from our clients to quote out what hybrid would look like for fall of 2021. When we shared it back to them and presented to them in December and January of 2021 here, they were just shocked and flabbergasted how much the costs were. So in reality, a lot of them have decided one or the other, not both. And very few are dipping their toes in both until they can get their budgets raised. And so that is kind of the hurtful answer, because some people are like, no, but it can be done. But I was literally chatting with someone else right before our call, and I said, oh, you mentioned that you're doing hybrid in July. I am curious, since you're an association, how are you doing it? And she goes, well, technically we're only showing 3 of our keynotes and 2 breakouts that happen to be in the same room, and that's it. And I go, so you're not really hybrid. It's we're just streaming 5 talks and that's it. Remember, hybrid really means you are bringing the digital world together and you're bringing the in-person world together. So just be careful of when you use that word. And that's why I am really trying to coin the term hybrid sandwich.
Yeah, so the hybrid sandwich, in essence, hybrid's going to cost what it costs.
Yes.
You're emphasizing the sandwich as the hybrid on either side of the meeting to extend
basically
the value.
To extend that cost and the value, correct? Because the problem is that the controllers and CFOs do not like seeing that it's going to hit all in 1 week or 3 days or whatever your meeting is, if it's 1 day. And so I'm saying, okay, then we're going to stretch it out. If we can stretch it out over 6 to 8 weeks and still invest that same amount of money, they feel better because they can justify that, oh, well, this is some marketing expense. This is some sales expense. Maybe this is even some internal expense. And that is the reason why, because it's still going to cost, because you have to, if you're going to do it right, you're going to want to well produce it. Do not just slap it on, and just push it out in the world like with a phone on a tripod. I do not recommend that.
Hey, Cindy,
I was just gonna say that was my question. Is like do it on a budget, So are there some groups that can get by with saying, hey, we're going to bring in the people that can't be here and slap an iPad on a tripod and send it out on Facebook Live or YouTube Live or something?
I think you might get the first one, but let's be honest. When it's not well produced, do you really stay on? Like if it's shaking and if it's cutting in and out, you can't really hear. Do you really stay on? No. I mean, none of us do, because our attention span is expecting a very well produced production coming across.
Oh hell, I'm not sure I'm going to stay on for this whole thing. I have email to check, Cindy.
Thanks, Dad.
And now, actually, can I address that point? So I don't know how many of y'all read the recent article. They talked about CISO that was in Florida. And one of the guys so it was an in-person event. They decided to do only in-person, no hybrid. And they asked him, can you write a write-up of what was the hardest transition, since this was the first in-person conference he attended since 2020. And what he said, he goes, I forgot how much I would jump to other tasks when I'm in virtual, that when I was in person, I could not do that. So to Jeff, even though I know he was joking about jumping and looking at email, but think about it. That is actually one of the reasons why we miss the in-person, is because I am dedicated and I've committed myself to being there in person and reconnecting with people or meeting strangers that I haven't met before. And it's very hard to, jump back on your email or grab a conference call, because then it pulls you away from that conference. And why would I spend that money, invest that kind of time and resources and not be fully there, right? And the other thing I challenge you, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to challenge y'all to think about, if I was online, do you really want to be chatting with someone online when you're in person? I want to be talking to Christina next to me, and I would tell, like, if Leighton reached out to me, if he was on the virtual, I would say, hey, Leighton, can we talk about this later? Because I'm already in person and Christina's right here.
Yeah, it's almost like how we have a chat going on at the same time we have.
Yes.
It's like a weird, I don't know, 2/3 hybrid.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah,
what I wanted to say was, John has an interesting question. So do any of your clients, after you told them the cost of the hybrid, just say, oh, let's do one or the other?
Yes, they have. So I'll tell you why it's so high. It's because we are essentially producing 2 events, and our virtual is almost, actually, yes, you might save a little bit of money on food and beverage, but because we encourage all of our clients to mail kits to their virtual attendees, and we also encourage them to do things that have a little more personalization, since it's all digital, we are actually finding that our average virtual well-produced event is actually equivalent to the in-person. Maybe cut or save 10%. And yes, you have a farther reach because you can now bring in people that are not from your state or maybe that you normally would have been bound to whoever could invite. But the cost of the flat cost of just producing it straight out of the gate, we are encouraging people to budget north of $150,000. So just think about that. That's for a really well-produced digital event. And think about what your last in-person conference costs, right? So it's not like I'm trying to do this on $10,000. I am trying to really do it well and touch across all boards.
Yeah, so you're saying that's a well-produced virtual meeting is
Yes,
100?
that is a very well-produced virtual meeting. Like bare bones of something personalized, really well speakers, a production studio so that your keynotes and your key speakers are coming across really well produced, engagement, personalization in the gifting area, things that would keep them staying on tune, you know, and of course, moderators, everything, all that, and just really well branded elements. I'm sure some of y'all by now, since we are all professionals in this room, you've attended those meetings where even their frame is branded, the emails are branded, the gift box is branded. I mean, it is to the nines. And that is what we have found, is that if people are willing to invest, this is what we have found to be the cost. Now, I will be honest, one of our very first early on virtuals was over $1 million. So I was definitely distracted and thinking that is what most corporations were going to do. And I was quickly realized that most corporations weren't going to spend that much money. So I quickly, and in fact, if you want to see a good, better, best, we have it on our Red Velvet website, a high level budget for those that are DIYing it themselves, to show you how we break it down. Because the 150 is plus is definitely the best. But we have had challenges where clients were like, I only have 30,000. What does that look like? I only have 75,000. What does that look like? So I finally just pulled the Band-Aid off that and just, shared everything out of what it costs, because people were not realizing what it costs to bring in all those different elements. And so then back to John's original question here is, when we finally started quoting out hybrid, so knowing that Texas was open, mind you, we have been reopened since May of 2020. And yes, some of the capacity levels have been a little different in the venues, but in general, we knew approximately how many people we could hold in a given physical space. But let's pretend the space was capped at like 200 people and they wanted to have 1,000 in person and then as many as they could online. Well, that means we had to have 5 venues, 5 times 200. I'm just simplifying things. So then guess what? That means we had to have 5 cameras. And really, I don't think you should only have 1 camera angle. So when we do a broadcast from an event, we recommend 2 to 3 cameramen so that we can angle it and make it look like it's well produced. So now all of a sudden we are up to 3 times 5, 15 cameramen and plus dress rehearsal. So now can you see how fast the math was adding up? And they were like, oh my gosh, we can't do that. So not only would they reduce down and go, okay, you know what? Maybe we only cap it to 200 people in person. And now let's like your idea, let's film this and we're going to push it back out a few weeks later so that we can draw as many people that could not attend. But as I mentioned to you, I was chatting with someone right before our call and I go, can I ask, is your digital like registration just through the roof? And she goes, no, instead they're kind of upset that the 200 sold out and they want to come in person. They don't really want to see just the 5 live keynotes.
Yeah, that's, I mean, we were talking about this on Tuesday on our pre-call in that when we first talked to Cindy about coming on and do hybrid meetings a month ago, and now it's like things are different. People, the climate's changed a little bit since a month ago, as far as hybrids and versus in person. There's a great question from Melissa Waters that came in over the registration. Mm-hmm. I'm going to combine it with some of the chat and kind of pose a 2-part question. She asked, what questions should you be asking?
Yes.
But I want to know what questions you should be asking both towards your leadership and what questions should you ask the production people?
Yes. Okay.
When
So
you,
let's first start with leadership, because I'll be honest, it has been an education journey since last November. So very first thing I've asked every single one of our, either if it's a marketing or meeting planner, I said, what have you been gold with for 2021? Have you been gold with basically boosting morale, increasing sales, reconnecting with lost clients, or increasing visibility to new prospects? Because depending on that answer, it does change the variable of what the budget's allowed. Because guess what? The one area that always has more budget is the sales team. So if has anything to do with securing more sales, making sure the VIP clients are happy, guess what? Money will appear, because to them, they need that way to re-engage. And I will say the people that suffered the most in the pandemic, besides our hospitality industry, were salespeople that could not connect with their clients digitally. So they want a way to figure out, how can I connect with them in person? Is it a wine and dine? Is it an incentive that's creative? Is it a smaller remote event, but yet I bring them together under one roof, and we go to where they live? So that is why I always encourage people, please ask your leadership what's keeping them up at night. Because if it is sales driven, you will get the money. Because if you educate them and share with them what people have done in the last 14 months, they will quickly realize that they are behind. And I have talked to so many CEOs in this time, and it's amazing to me to see how many kind of froze and wanted to wait and see, and then how many were willing to take a little bit of a gamble. And maybe they weren't ready to spend $1 million, but they were ready to spend like $100,000. And were they happy with it? But you have to also recognize also where we are right now as a country. So I am actually right now part of a team that is planning for a live in-person event in Barcelona, because I don't know how many of y'all follow Mobile World Congress. That event is happening in person in June in Barcelona. We have a client that is going there, and crazy enough is that this is a truly international event, meaning it pulls in from Europe, it pulls in from Australia, pulls in from US, etc. Can you imagine? Because right now we don't have a consistent policy of travel. In fact, Spain is even closed. If I wanted to just to go there for vacation right now, even though I'm fully vaccinated, it's closed. So what the government has done is said, this conference means so much to us. If you show us that you bought this exhibitor pass or attendee pass, we are going to give you a permission to come into the country. So these are the things that you have to be aware of. And then you have to ask yourself again, going back to the questions of like, is this important enough? Because we've been sharing with the client how much more expensive it is to do an event, even though it's in person during COVID times. Not only do we have to supply the extra protective, like the sanitizers, the mask, everything, but there's just so many extra layers. And on top of that, they are limiting capacity in their booth. So they have to make that decision whether or not this is worth the investment. But the bottom line was, it was because they had a hard time connecting with people digitally. And that is why they're using this in-person event. Now, what to ask the tech company? Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Actually, that's exactly what I was about to prompt you.
So this is a whole nother area, because I'm going to be honest, you have to think like a TV producer, and you've got to think back to what do they need in order to be set up for success. So they need to understand your run of show ahead of time, because otherwise, if you just tell them, like give them a list of technical like cameras and people, they think you know what you're talking about, but in reality, really what you should do is share with them what you're hoping will happen on stage and what will convey on screen, because they are the people that know best of how to translate that. And this entire time, I have told people, do not translate events, in-person events, one-to-one online. So for example, I saw someone did ask a question, and was, do we try to make the offline audience engage with the in-person audience? And my recommendation is no. You can have a chat room in your app or whatever, that's fine, but do not force it. Because like I said, if I'm sitting in a room next to Christina, I want to spend my time wisely with the people in the room. I don't want to be talking on a phone to someone because it looks like I'm distracted. Second,
what about from a I was gonna say,
yeah.
what about a cost perspective? Like if I'm a planner in the hybrid or the virtual production team says it's going to cost you $1 million,
Yeah.
which obviously is an exaggeration, but should I say like, okay, here's my money?
No, I don't think you should say that. I think you need to dive into figuring out how does this break down and what does it look like? Because here's why. You need to make sure that the right technical production team understands what your priorities are as well. Because it's not just about having the right gear, it's about having a team that's willing to navigate with you as your executives are changing their mind. So let me kind of give you an example right now. This Barcelona event that we're working on. I came in midway through, they had already hired the AV team. They already even decided which platform they were going to do because they're going to have a virtual component. All of these things. I had to quickly figure out then who on the team understands what the client's end goal is, because I want to make sure that we're delivering all of the pieces that they want, because there is a way to dictate and tell people, you know, I want this many monitors and this, but we have to always go back to why. Are we trying to show a demonstration? Are we trying to show a video that just plays in the background? What are we trying to do to achieve the client's goal? And going back and making sure those questions. If you click on my resource link too as well, there are a set of questions you should ask your virtual production on our resources page. And I'm more than happy if you reach out to me. If you can't find our website, I'm more than happy to share it with you, because the faster we can get everyone educated on those questions to ask, I think the better off we are as meeting planners and professionals in this industry.
So speaking of asking questions, we've got a couple of questions prompted in a poll. You want to throw one of those up? Or, I mean, we approached it from if you're our planner side and if you're an attendee side, what is important to you? So we'll go and throw those up.
I would love to see how people respond here.
And yeah. As that happens, let's talk about sponsorships.
Yes.
What advice can you give for getting some?
So I assume
sponsors?
Many of y'all have seen last year. So again, if you had committed to sponsoring an event prior to pandemic, you stuck it out, right? But for the most part, most sponsors were a little disappointed in how things worked out, whether it was like a digital booth or if it was just a banner ad and whatnot. And again, it goes back to, don't just have your logo splashed on the screen. Ask the client that you're hosting or sponsoring, can I be the one that makes the introduction for the virtual speaker? Can I get the list in advance so I can reach out to some of these attendees and see if I can connect with them prior or after the event, since we know that they're pulled in so many different directions? Can I even come up with maybe a way to kind of kick off the virtual networking if there is a component like that? And that's the part that is tricky, because what happened was so many people tried to do the one-to-one translation from the in-person to virtual, and it failed. Because think about it, why would I just walk into a digital lobby, okay, and click on all the different sponsors? Like, to me, that's just a glorified website. Instead, what I would rather have is I'd rather have someone come on, talk, introduce, and go, I am here to connect with you. And if you don't mind, I'll be reaching out to you in a few days after this event. And I'd love to stay connected if we can be of help, you know, making that one-on-one connection, because too often people were just throwing it into this digital lobby and just expecting the attendee to browse through it. And that's just not how the mind works when you actually walk a trade show floor. It's a very different experience.
No, we were doing that way before virtual lobbies. It was just a sponsor page where you could click and you could contact a sponsor before the event. I mean,
see,
I remember having a demo. I was like, this is exactly what I've been doing for years.
And you don't want to, you don't want to repeat stuff that doesn't work. What was the result? I'm curious.
Of
that poll.
I don't know. I can't see it.
Who took it off? Was it Marissa that took it? Okay. So that's good. So most of them have a hybrid. I can remember you could choose more than one, right? But yeah, it's the budget and not right audience meeting. Yeah. I'm surprised people didn't choose off, I don't have the staff or time more, because that's been an issue too. We've learned that.
Do we want to throw that other pull up while we're at it? I mean,
let's do it.
While you're pulling, you might as well keep pulling, right?
Oh, I'm dying to see how people respond to this one.
The poll delay always gets me. I'm like, start answering people.
I know. And the mute unmute got me that time. It's definitely talking while I was muted. I was gonna say for people, I know you're a big advocate of returning to face-to-face.
But I'm also a big advocate using the digital economy smarter, use it smartly.
Yeah. And I was just gonna say, what about the people that still don't want to travel? They're still reluctant.
That's okay. But then they have to be okay with it being more of like TV and like TED Talks, like how it was before, because the reality is not everyone has that budget to be able to afford the whole live engagement piece. Like, think about it. Even the award ceremonies, like the Oscars and the Grammys, did you see how they produced them this year? And I was a little bit shocked, I'll be honest, and surprised, given again how much money I thought they had, that they didn't produce it better. And I was kind of using them as a bar, and that's why I said I feel like the only people that really kind of surprised me and took it really to the next level was sports, trying to really bring the audience back in.
Mm-hmm. John, you have your hand up. Well, it's a virtual hand. Oh, now you have both.
So, Cindy, we really talked about attendees here, but there was an interesting conversation I had about a month ago with someone that's supposed to have a conference in Austin in August.
Yep.
She had sent out numerous inquiries to speakers, and out of 88 speakers, only 76, only 7 said that they would come. 76 said they wanted to do virtual. And I'm like wondering, okay, I don't want to attend a conference in person if I'm going to sit my butt in a
I agree.
venue room and look up at a screen as somebody's talking to me. Have you experienced any of this?
That's funny that you should bring that up, because I was on a call, was it 3 weeks ago? And it was with professional speakers in the room. Mm-hmm. And they shared with me a challenge that I didn't think about. So let's say they don't live in the US. If they live in Canada and they come into the US, they have to quarantine when they go back. So they were asking, this is the problem, is that I want to speak in person, but because if I go into the US to speak and then I come back, I have to self-quarantine. And so can I charge that to the client? No. Or how do I get around that? And so that was one issue. And second is, I think there are some speakers, unfortunately, that are still in that same boat, kind of similar to attendees, where they don't want to come back in person. And I'll be honest, then this isn't the event. I would be very transparent as a meeting planner and say, we need you in person. The only reason why we would broadcast you in is because something came up at the last minute, like either a flight completely canceled and we couldn't get you in. Oh, sorry, I should pause so people can see what the results were here. Cost savings, yeah. And so I think it's important to reset that expectation. Now, can I ask, were these speakers for that August meeting, were they also attendees, or were they truly speakers that were separated from the attendee base?
She did not elaborate that much, but most of them, it was supposed to be a medical conference. And
got it.
I, like I said, to do
CDs. And that is going to be an interesting thing, because I will tell you, I have definitely noticed there's been a difference. If it is like one of those CEU type of meetings, training, a lot of them have said they would prefer to keep it in the digital land. And they don't care to necessarily fly, go out of their way and come. And I don't know if it's because they consider.
But there was I think there was a hands-on educational component of this. So and I didn't get into the well.
And then, but what I found is that anything that has been falling under what I call the sales and marketing arena, all of them want to come back in person. They just need their company to approve to lift the travel ban. And they're there in a heartbeat, because that is the other thing that's holding us back right now. We have people where they said, I am ready to travel, but my company is not allowing me to yet. And so that has been a hard sell. So right now we have our first in-person event on May the 29th. Now that is an individual event, meaning everyone was on their own if they wanted to travel to Austin for it. There's no company that they have to get permission, et cetera. And it was capped at 200. So it's happening full force. Going, we got it approved through the city of Austin, so it's going. And I think we're in that stage right now that we have to, again, reevaluate what's going on with your firm, with the city that you're going to, and then really over communicating to the speaker, hey, we do expect you to be in person, because we know that people just don't want to look at a screen. I get it if it's like a celebrity and you just have like 5 minutes that you want the celebrity to say hello. I get that, but I agree. A keynote is much more effective when it's in person. And besides, this is what you want to create FOMO for, so that when you do the digital piece online a few weeks later, it's because of that energy that was in that room from the keynote.
Yeah, I think one of the parts that you kind of left out, it's said but unsaid of your hybrid sandwich, is that the meat in the middle is live.
Yes.
It's not hybrid.
Correct. Yeah. It's not hybrid. And that's why I was like, it's the idea of going back to what works from a just psychology level. People want to be with other people and talk like-minded people, but we are filming everything because we're going to rebroadcast it later. So think of it as almost like you're part of a set that is going to be part of a TV show being shared a few weeks later. Because I do see it as when you're on site that we'll get little sound bites of people that were attending, of what they liked best and why they liked that speaker, and incorporating it all in to this final virtual, a few weeks later that will be produced. And the other thing that's nice about that is that it can live on your website. So even after that initial, you can rebroadcast, just like on YouTube and on Vimeo, you can rebroadcast the ones that were really, really strong. And again, use that back as a loop to get you not only marketing eyes, but also a community that supports you in this.
Yeah, it's the FOMO, the fear of missing out. And we're just talking about months and weeks on the other side, but I can't tell you how many times, I'm trying to build a website for an event and they're like, oh, what do we have from last year? Do we have any images? Do we have any? You got it. If you do it right, if you're thinking
you
about
should
this
have
ahead
it.
of time,
You should have
you've got
it.
a
Exactly.
promotional video that you can use for next year and get more butts in the seats.
I will tell you, I think what's going to change, and people really do need to rethink this, just like how the smartphone has kind of changed our way of just how we engage and check email and whatnot. You really shouldn't be thinking of it as the annual meeting, and instead think of it as, I want to re-engage with my audience at least once a quarter. So this is how it's going to look like. And how do we make sure that we really are touching base with them? So maybe quarter one is in person, or the digital, the hybrid sandwich, and then quarter two is only online or something. But I really do think people need to rethink their annual meeting, and they really need to spread it out throughout the entire year to make that content last, and also to make sure that they're re-engaged with their audience and their community. Because right now there's so much information at our fingertips that if you just wait a whole year, you lose out, and people are making decisions.
Cindy, we've talked a little bit. I mean, you've addressed kind of like to do it full on. It's really, hybrid is full on. It's really expensive. And we've had some people chat about, okay, maybe just live streaming some, so there's definitely a difference between an actual hybrid meeting and a live stream. Have you seen anything effective that kind of keeps the cost low, but isn't just live streaming a session here or there with a cell phone?
I will say,
what are some of the more like cool things that you've seen?
So here's the interesting part. I will tell you who I thought did this really well, even pre-COVID. How many of y'all ever watched the Apple announcements? Okay. If you have not, I would highly encourage you to Google it and watch one, because they condense it down to 1 hour. Okay. And maybe an hour and a half, but they have a ticker on their website. It shows the countdown, and that is what they live stream. There is still a live audience, but mind you, only a few people can go into it. And when I say a few people, back then it was like maybe 1,000. But what I loved about it is they highly produced even what was on the stage, so that when it was streaming, everyone on Twitter, Reddit, whatever, they were all chatting. And that seems to work, because again, if people understand that's where I need to go find my audience, that seems to work in building up that thing. So I could see it as a very cheap way to do it is, let's say you're streaming on Facebook Live, you encourage people to chat in the Facebook stream so that they can connect with each other. And you tell people, hey, we're like, you start the countdown. It's 7 days out, and this is when we're going to announce, and we're going to have our big keynote. But notice I didn't say it's a 3-day event. It was literally all in 1 hour, 1.5 hours. But I can tell you from watching that production of those Apple announcements, that was easily well over $3 million of investment to get that all happen. So again, the question goes back to the corporate clients is, who is ready to invest in that technology and that time to produce a really well put together piece? Because it still comes down to the reason why that stands out and everyone's so impressed is because they took the time ahead of time to really plan out a really well produced announcement.
Yeah, part of it is just planning to make it into digital
Yes,
content.
they thought about it well in advance. Yes, everything was thinking about what's it going to look like on the screen? What's it look like even on the iPhone, the iPad, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as long as we're talking about sandwiches, do you consider a hot dog a sandwich?
You know, I don't know. I don't think so. I think of a
No,
sandwich as
I mean,
like
it's
truly
two
like a
pieces
turkey
of-
or a Reuben.
So the bread has to actually be physically separate from each other.
You know, I don't know why, if that's why I don't think of it as a sandwich. I guess it's more the hot dog then. It's because it's a hot dog shape. It's not it's not like flat. Am I being too naive? Should I call a hot dog a sandwich?
It's kind of like a bready taco. No, I don't know. I was running out of questions. So oh, the pita
The
sandwich.
audience is awfully quiet. I mean, I'd love to hear feedback. How many of y'all are actually going back to in person? Okay. Oh, I see it.
No.
Oh, sorry. You have
I'm
a question.
not-
Oh, no. Okay. You have a question.
No,
Okay.
no. I just wanted you to know, I was trying to unmute. I'm never quick about that. I'm very hands-on, virtually challenged. Anyway, the company is, I personally am not yet and probably won't be for a while, but the company has decided that starting this month, 100% of all events moving forward will be met in person, unless, of course, it's a virtual only, which there are still taking place. So it has been interesting talking to my coworkers about it because it's anywhere from a 30-person meeting that just happened. It was 2 people at a round. So you can imagine there's like
spaced out
in the room. It was bleak is the word. You know? But they were following very strict protocols. So very safe meeting. But then there's some of the meetings that are supposed to be about 2,000 people.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So it's going to be, it's going to be very interesting over the summer, watching how all this, develops. So I'm curious what's happening with everybody else.
I'm seeing, I mean, the chat is blowing up with people sharing like when they're going back, which is fantastic. I like hearing that we're planning an in-person in September in Guam from Jeanette, but the big conference has been pushed to 2022. Kimberly Willis says we have one in September as well, full live, since the hybrid doesn't make sense for them, which great. Yeah, if it doesn't make sense, then don't do it. Why spend the money? Marissa says she has a client in person in Vegas this week for an incentive program. And
so the
Sally,
question about the meeting in Guam kind of raised an interesting question in my mind, and like, how important is location going to be going forward?
I think it's very important. I mean, did y'all know the reason why California, like when they were so restrictive, they lost so many meetings. Finally, they were able to convince them to reopen because they were just losing meeting after meeting after meeting. And so now I think it's June 15th is their magic date. But in the meeting world, I mean, I know it was a joke, but it's true. If you wanted to do a meeting, you either went to Texas, Florida, Nashville, or Las Vegas. Those were the only 4 places. And the reason why I said Texas and Florida, because we were both the only 2 wide open states that people were willing to travel to and have a meeting in. And even in Canada, I was talking to those Canadians and they were like, it's so disappointing because we've been on lockdown forever and we don't have any end in sight. And on top of that right now, I can't even really travel to the US without having to self-quarantine when I come back. So it really has to be something valuable for me to give up 2 weeks, because even if I came down to the US, attended the meeting, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks back in Canada. And that does suck. Why would I want to do that?
What do you think? I mean, do you think there'll be like a vaccine passport or something? I mean, I know this is beyond.
That's been the rumor, but here's the problem is that all of us are on different vaccinate, like we don't have a standardized. So I don't know how they're going to enforce it. I mean, I know when I go to other countries and I have to show my certain vaccinations, like for like Ebola or whatever, but I don't know how they're going to standardize it since we don't have it standardized. And again, the US has been actually one of the loudest ones saying no vaccine passport. And that's the irony, is that we are the ones that want to travel out. So right now we're not welcomed in a lot of countries because we're the ones who said we don't want to be held accountable to the vaccine passport. Who was going to ask a question? I just saw, I interrupted you. I apologize.
No, I
Yeah.
just wanted to give clarification on the Guam thing.
Yeah.
It's really not so much like a destination. We have, courts in Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Hawaii. So that's where they're planning on meeting. They've all been stuck on islands. They want to get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
The protocols on the island seem to be pretty good. Our problem is it's Guam. So even though there's major hotels, they don't have a lot of AV facilities or AV equipment.
So you have to bring it in. Oh my God.
We have to bring it in. And if they do want to do part of it hybrid, our big thing is like literally finding, a camera crew and AV equipment to support it so that we can do hybrid.
Wow.
So we're exploring that right now.
Yeah. Oh, and can I share with you a frustration I'm having right now? And I know this has nothing to do with the hybrid talk, but it does have to do very much with our industry. I shared it yesterday during the Austin Chamber, and I said, right now, I feel like we're going through a transition again in our industry, actually everywhere. It's not just our industry. And what I mean by that is we have, in the last 2 months, ourselves, our company, we've seen turnover, people quitting because now that they see that events are coming back, they're rethinking, do I want to be there? Do I want to be in person? Do I want to do hybrid? Is this really what I want to do? And so we're seeing a flux of people quitting, not wanting to be in our industry anymore. And on top of that, we see our clients quitting and moving jobs. So I am in this like fog right now of trying to, what I call rebuilding Red Velvet, but also reconnecting with our clients, because literally every time when a client drops us a note, it's not to tell us, hey, we're ready to go back to events. It's like, oh, by the way, I gave my 2 weeks notice and you're going to be working with so-and-so. And that has been shaking me up. Sally, did you have a comment?
Sally.
Yeah.
There's the unmute button. I knew it was there somewhere. I think that's real important. And I think I have a comment here, and then I have a request from the audience. We've got a bigger problem in the industry that we still haven't addressed as thoroughly as I think we need to. And that surrounds the ROI of events. I mean, we've been hit recently with 3 things, right? Terrorist attacks, recession, and now this virus that completely knocked us off our stage for quite a while. And I think, we've talked here about budgets and how important those are to come back to do what we need to do. And being able to get the budget and make the quick comeback, it's really about understanding the ROI of our.
I agree with you.
And I thought it was curious that on one of the questions where it says the ROI is too low, nobody chose that.
Yeah.
Well, was that because we don't really know what the ROI is for digital versus live? Or is that because it truly wasn't a good choice? I don't know, but
yeah,
I think until we can really show the value in the bottom line, we're going to continue this process of hills and valleys without a good defense and a quick comeback and economic recovery proof for countries, regions, whatever it might be. So here's my request, and then I'm gonna shut up. Some of you know I'm a certified ROI specialist. We have been trying to get into the event industry to make this a thing, whether it's points you get with MPI or working with PCMA, which they've done some really great things. But I'm looking for other people that really care about this enough and that will join me to try to get this voice out, because this is a very important part of what we do that I don't think our industry does well. So I'll put my email here in the chat and you all can reach out to me. And I'm trying to build a wave here.
I like it. I like it, Sally. And I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, one of our services at the end of the event is to turn it back around to the ROI. And so that means they had to answer us before they hired us, how they're measuring the ROI. So is it
Yes.
cost per new customer acquisition? Is it cost per head of attending even? Is it how many new leads they get and how long do we have to measure that? So it is tricky because again, oftentimes the meeting planner is not sitting in the sales department, so they don't necessarily get to see all the CRM. So I always try to educate them that you have to make sure you are getting all these metrics so that we can compare from the beginning to the end
Right.
if there was a change, because
Right.
otherwise we're going in blind. And
Right.
I applaud you for doing this. So I will definitely reach out to you as well, because I think that's a huge.
I
Thanks,
feel like
Cindy.
the pandemic has been kind of a weird two-sided thing for ROI, in that like we've definitely realized that there's a ROI in events, but all of a sudden now we're saying, all right, you want to do hybrid, double the budget.
I know. And I think that's why I said at the end of the day, budgets are going to win, or the clients that have flexible budget are going to win, and they're going to be able to get to do what they want because they actually have the budget. And those that are on a tighter budget are going to have to make sacrifices and choose. Do I stay 100% digital, or do I only do one in-person event and the rest digital, or maybe it's a combination of something. But I will tell you, I do think if you're pro, in person, I do think the pent-up demand is finally hit us, because we've been in this pandemic so long. People are missing that human connection. Even the most introverted person was like, I just need to come out. Like, is there anything I can attend? So I do feel like that is on the up and up. I think the challenge is because we've had to stay within COVID terms, which means limited attendance. If they're not fast to the draw of like reserving their spot, they may end up having to wait a little longer than they thought to go to an in-person event that they actually want to go to.
Well, thanks, Cindy. We are running out of time,
Yep.
but before we wrap it up, we like to share our guest passions for doing good. Cindy, you have 4 different organizations that we ask all of our attendees to return their investment towards your time. Just, I don't know what I was trying to wrap it up, but it didn't come out as succinctly in my, in my mouth as it did in my head. So just, Cindy, please talk about the Search Foundation, Echo Austin, UT Elementary School, and the Texas 4000.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was like, I can't even remember which 4 I told you because I had to choose. So first one, which was, you said Search Foundation, that is actually for our own industry. So let's, for those that were affected by Hurricane Katrina, they actually sent out scholarships right after to help those kind of like temporarily find housing. And so now, granted, I know during the pandemic, all of us were hit, so I don't know how they dispersed their funds then. But Search Foundation is under the umbrella of ILEA, which is International Live Events Association. And they're again trying to raise money to help us when something bad happens. And it can even be an individual. Like, let's say, sadly, if like I got into a car accident and I needed some medical bills paid, you fill out an application and they will consider it. So that's what Search Foundation is. Second one is Echo Austin. Because I sit on the Visit Austin chair, and I am very much aware of how much tourism means to Austin for us to return to a healthy economy. This has been a very controversial topic, which is the homeless problem. And I'm not shy in saying that I understand that it is a much bigger problem than one person can solve. But I'm hoping that Echo Austin, which is a nonprofit arm that is trying to rehouse them, will help that. And so for every dollar you put in, they are trying to, again, take one person off the street and hopefully house them temporarily. So I have made it a big goal of mine, because I don't think they should be able to just camp on our public sidewalks, because it's hurting our tourism and our group meetings. But I don't believe also they're a criminal either. I want to rehouse them. So that's what ATX Echo is. The third one was UT Elementary School. I'm a big believer in the next level of education, and also giving kids the chance to have an opportunity to almost have like a private school or charter school if they can. And that's essentially what UT Elementary School does, is that it is designated to some of the poorer neighborhoods in Austin, and you qualify to go to it, and they get essentially like a private school education for free. And then last but not least is Texas 4000. I think all of us know someone that's been affected by cancer, and this is a bike ride that UT students sign up and have to qualify for. and they ride from Austin to Alaska to raise money to basically find a cure for cancer. So if you want to sponsor a bike rider, or if you want to even host them, if you live along the route, they are always looking for host families too. So it doesn't have to be just necessarily cash.
That's super cool. I mean, I'm a big cyclist, so that's
Yeah.
That one got my attention when I was
Oh, good.
writing them down. Well, thank you, Cindy. Let's
Thank
give Cindy a big round
you.
of applause, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Always a pleasure. Our next brunch will be June 10th. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to have 4 representatives from different registration and virtual software platforms. They're going to come on for a no holds barred death match. I'm sorry, I meant to say a showcase. We're going to do breakout sessions where they're going to showcase their products. You can ask them questions on sort of a small group, not one-on-one, so very casual, no pressure kind of environment. So we hope you can make it for that. And of course, we love doing these, but we need your help. So share, follow, comment. Find us on all the major social media platforms, including YouTube, by searching Attendee Management. Invite a friend to the next one. Check out our archives and our interview site. And until next time, we'll see you around.
Thank you.
Bye,
Y'all
thanks,
have a great May. Bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
So good.